Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be jumping into 3D modeling. This is sort of an introduction course to a lot of that. We'll be looking at views, projection, rendering, working planes, and then we'll get into some basic manipulation in 3D today. The first thing I want to look at is going to be views, actually. We've sort of touched on this in another video, but just to give it a quick recap, when we are working in the 2D space, what we are looking at here is a top plan view. That means we are looking down, and this grid is sort of like our sheet of paper that we're working on. Everything we draw is going to end up on that one plane. That is called top plan view. And in that, we're looking at it as a 2D plan. Now, when we get into the world of 3D, there are a lot more options that kind of pop up. So as we break out into this world, you'll see now we have a lot of different ways that we could start to look at these objects. We can change our views up here. So right now it's a custom view, but we can change it to a front view. Right, left, etc. You can do isometric views. And it's just a different way to look through when you're working in the 3D space. You can use the drop down over here to navigate, to flip between those different views. You can also use, if you have a keypad, I have an external keypad here, I keep it on number lock, and then you can just use those to bounce around to your different views. So you'll see as I key over and then 0 will put you back in top plan. So now we're looking at it two-dimensionally as well. The last way that you can get into this is going to be your flyover tool. So that is this little tool right here. What this does with that selected is you simply click on the page and you can twirl it around. So you grab it and you twist it. That's the flyover tool. You'll find it up here in your basic tool set, and you'll also find it down here in your 3D tool set. This little icon right here, 3D modeling. If you click on that, that'll bring up this 3D tool set, and that's where you'll also find the flyover tool. The other quick tip to using the flyover tool, if you say you have your selection tool active, what you can do is if you hold down Control or Command on a Mac, and if you depress the scroll wheel on your mouse, that automatically engages your flyover tool. So I use that a lot so that I'm not constantly coming back here and clicking on things. If I have my selection tool, I can just Control, mouse wheel, that moves me through, scroll my mouse wheel, that'll zoom me in and out, and then I've still got my selection tool, so I can start to select things like that. So that's Control plus your mouse wheel. That's one you're going to want to come back to and use time and time again. The last option for looking at things three-dimensionally too is going to be down here, and that is the on-screen view control. Remember, I have mine shut off. If you hover down here, so if you're in a three-dimensional view, if you're not in top plan mode, if you hover down here, you'll see this. Select that and click Show On-Screen View Control. Now you have this little box that you can just click and drag, and that will move things around for you as well. If you click on a face, it'll take you to that view. If you double click, it'll take you to the opposite, back. So that's the on-screen view control. Personally, I don't use it a ton, so I keep it turned off, and that's just right down here. But if I want it back on, just hover, and you'll see the ghosted image of that icon will come up, and you can turn it right back on. The other part of views that we want to consider real quick is the projection method. So currently we are in orthagonal projection, but we can also view things with perspective. So that is what perspective looks like versus orthogonal. The difference being perspective draws towards a vanishing point, whereas orthogonal is a parallel projection. So you'll see here these lines are actually parallel as they go back. Now, the The kind of projection that you use will often depend on whatever you're trying to achieve. If I'm working with directors or if I'm doing a presentation and I want some really nice looking renderings, I'll do that in perspective because that gives a more natural look to the human eye. So it gives you a better sense of how the space is going to play. But if I'm doing shop drawings or anything like that, I'm going to keep it an orthagonal just so that I can get in and see things for what they really are a little bit. But those are going to be the two that you use most, orthogonal or normal perspective. So the third part of the equation in terms of viewing stuff is view, projection, and then rendering. What that essentially is talking about is what does it look like. So as we hop in here, you'll see the textured surface here. This is called a shaded rendering mode. You'll see up here the little teapot looking icon. That's where you can select what your render mode is. So right now it's in shaded. So wireframe, for example, just gives you the edges. There are several other options. You can do sketch, which makes it look a little hand-drawn. That's shaded again. You can do artistic render works, which gives it, you can change the options on this, but it gives it kind of a hand-drawn marker sketch look. But the two you're probably going to use most are going to be wireframe and shaded. Now, when you're in top plan view, everything here is going to be in wireframe by default. And then when you hop back in this way, it's going to jump into shaded. The other way to get into shaded, so say we're in top plan, wireframe, sorry. Say we're in wireframe. If you hit Control-Shift-G, that'll put you into shaded as well. If for some reason when you break into 3D it still looks like wireframe, just Control-Shift-G, or again you can do that up here. Control-Shift-G is kind of a legacy thing. It used to be called OpenGL instead of shaded, but they're now calling it shaded. One of the applications where you may want to be using wireframe is if you're trying to look through one set piece to see what's behind it, to see what's going on back there. Sometimes if it's shaded, it's hard to grab things or see what's back there. The other solution to that, Control-Shift-G, would be actually just hold down the B, and that activates your X-ray tool. So by holding down B, I imagine it means to see behind something. By holding down B, as you move your cursor, you can see what's going on behind there, and you can click on objects behind other objects. And that sort of encapsulates the way in which we look at our work. So that's going to be views, whether it's top plan, right, left, isometric, looking at it from the front, looking at it from the back. Visualization, that's the render mode, so wireframe versus shaded. And then projection method. So that's going to be, once we're in 3D, orthogonal versus perspective. Those are kind of the three elements of how we look at work. But now let's jump really quick into doing some quick modeling in 3D and some basic manipulation of parts and pieces in this world. So to start, let's grab just a rectangle tool. Now, when I draw with this rectangle tool, what I am drawing will appear on our layer plane. I'll go into that in just a second. So you'll see there, it's just a 2D object now in our 3D world. And what we'll want to do is pop that up into 3D. So we'll do that through what's called an extrude. To get that, you come up to Model and Extrude. It'll open a little dialog box, and you can tell it how high you want it to go. Let's say 6 foot. There we go. If you look over in Object Info, you'll see right here our extrude is 6 foot. The other way you could do that is going to be just use Control-E. That's the hotkey for extrude. Control-E, you'll be using that one a lot. And again, it'll open the dialog box. We want it 8 foot. And there we go. The other way you could do that is, once again, come down into your 3D modeling tool set. Again, that's this little twisting helix looking thing. That's your 3D modeling tool set. Click on that, and then you'll have this set of tools above. So if you come here to this one, which is push-pull, with that selected, you can click on a surface, 2D or 3D, and then you can drag it up as high as you want it to go. That's super useful. You can hit Tab and come in and enter the distance that you want it to be, 10 foot. Control Z to undo. You can also, if you have snapping on, snapping up is up here, if you recall. You click that and you can start to pull it. You can snap it to other objects. So if I snap here, it'll pull it up to the height that this is, or it'll pull it up to the height of this. So let's pull it to that corner, and you'll see as we come down, those are going to be the same height. So that is your push-pull tool and extrude. Those are going to be the main two ways in which you will move from 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions. In terms of manipulating things, if you look here, so let's go to a front view. We have just a regular box here. If we go to a front view, when we are in a straight front view or side view or top view, these nodes will come up on simple geometry. They won't come up on pieces such as this because it's just too weird. But on simple geometry, it'll bring up these nodes, and again, you can resize right here. So if I pull that up, now it's larger. Same thing, you can move pieces from one of these views. So you'll see my cursor turns into this little cross. Once I have that, I can pull this out to wherever I want it to be. So now it's out there. As you're moving things, if you hold down Shift, so as I'm pulling this up, and maybe I want to bring it straight up, but I'm starting to drift. If you hold Shift while you're moving it, that'll bring it straight back online. Another way you can modify things would be over here in the object info. So I have this box selected. Same thing, I can change either this outer dimensions. I want it to be 5 foot by 5 foot. I want the extrusion to be 5 foot as well. So there we go. Now we have a perfect cube of 5 feet. Another thing, if you're looking at moving and copying things, so let's look at this from the front again. I want this to be sitting even on our layer plane. There we go. I'll bring it over here. I'll hold Shift as I do to make sure it's staying level. So if I wanted to move and duplicate something, I click on it and I'd start moving it wherever I wanted it, just as we had done. But if I hold Control while I do that, once I release my mouse, it will actually just create a duplicate. So that's a handy way to move things. The last way that you can move things will be if you use Control M. So Control M just brings up move. M for move. So you can change the X or the Y in here. I usually use Control M if I'm in 2D. So let's go back up to top plan view. So from top plan view, if I hit Control M, it'll open the dialog box and I can tell it to move on the X or Y plane. X is going to move you left to right, and Y is going to move you up and down on the page. So let's say I want to move this 10 feet up. Control M will open our dialog box. And 10 foot would be our Y-axis. 10 foot. There we go. If we want to move it down the page, it would be negative 10 foot. Now in 3D, you still have that Control M, but it's actually Control Alt M is moving in 3 dimensions. And that will give you our Z offset as well. So with Z, you can change the height of something. So let's look at this from here. Control Alt M. And the Z offset, I want to lift this up 10 foot. And there we go. So that really helps with positioning. If you don't know those hotkeys, that's fine. You can still come up here to Modify, Move, and if you just click Move, that'll open the 2D option with just your X and Y. And if you hit the 3D, that'll give you X, Y, and Z possibilities. Let's put that right back down there. So that is the Move command. So now that we're starting to talk about Z in terms of moving things up and down on a page, if we're looking at this from the front, you'll see that some objects can sit below, some objects sit on our little piece of paper. Remember how we talked about from a 2D top plan view, we have this piece of paper, right, that we're drawing on? And everything that we draw is going to end up on that piece of paper, even if we're in a 3D view. That is called your layer plane. So everything by default is going to end up on the layer plane. And then from there you can extrude and you can move it. Let's move that down, let's say 5 feet. And now you'll see we built it on the layer plane, and then we can drop it down below like that. So that's layer plane. There's a big distinction between a layer plane and a working plane. And what that essentially means is the working plane can be set. It's not a standard thing like the layer plane. The layer plane is always going to be this little grid of paper. But the working plane can be anything you want it to be. So to get your working plane tool, it's down here again in 3D modeling tool set. And this one here is set working plane. So if we select that, again we have modes with every tool. Up here we have a couple different modes. Let's look at planar face mode. That means I can hover over, see it's bringing up a plane, and as I hover over, certain faces are turning blue. Let's select this one here. So now that is the plane that I'm working on. So if I draw a similar rectangle, that is going to be on the same plane as the face of that box that I just drew. And everything I do from here, extrude, will extrude out of that plane. So that is the set working plane tool. And it doesn't have to just be like on a straight side like that. As I float over this little globe, this sphere, you'll see that it can follow and pick whatever you want it to be. And that's the planar mode. There's also a 3-point mode. So if you want to bisect something, 3 points will dictate a plane. So let's go there, there, there. So that is our new working plane. If I wanted it for some reason to cut right through there, then anything I draw, again, will be on that plane. So that's working plane. One of the hacks that makes things a little bit easier, though, instead of having to get out your working plane tool every single time, we have this auto plane. So let's select this little pink box here. Up here is where you'll find a lot of our planar stuff. This is going to be layer plane. So if I select that, I'm drawing once again on the piece of paper. Whereas if I enable auto plane, now that automatically turns on more or less our planar tool. So if I grab a circle, any surface I hover over, it'll turn blue, and that's a surface I can draw on. Anywhere around here, and you'll see it shift. So autoplane is great. It helps you really kind of navigate the workspace a little bit quicker without having to change tools and all that jazz. If you ever get into something and the planes are turning out weird and you've used your tool here to select something weird, if you're struggling to get back out of that and you're wondering why is all my stuff ending up on this plane, the two ways to get out of that is just going to be up here again. Just click this blue layer plane. The other way to get out of that is just to go to a top plan view, and that'll reset all of your planes. Now, sort of building on the last two components of layer planes and working planes and extrudes, one of the cooler things that we have on here is going to be what's called push-pull mode. So it's essentially using this tool as soon as you draw a shape. So let's look at our rectangle tool here. X to get my selection tool, delete. Let's look at a rectangle tool here. So as I draw this, if I have this enabled, go up to your rectangle tool, go up into your modes, and make sure that push-pull mode is selected, along with corner to corner or midpoint to corner, etc. So I'll go with corner to corner and push-pull mode. So as I draw my box, it is on the layer plane. You'll see as soon as I draw it, I can hover over it, and it brings up that same red face that we got with the push-pull tool. So then click again, and that will let you pull the shape up into 3D. So it makes your workflow really pretty quick if you can just float around. Let's go to automatic here. If you can just float around, pick a surface, draw a shape, and then automatically push-pull. And that'll join the shapes if you have this selected as well. Push-pull isn't available with every single tool. For example, it won't work with double line, but anything that has like a regular polygon or a polyline, so your rectangle, rounded rectangle, circle, oval, polyline, polygons, all of those, this will work for. And you'll notice when I select that, again, we have the option here to enable push-pull mode. Just like that. And you can push in and it will subtract. So if I push beyond the boundary here, that essentially just drills a hole in the object I'm working with. And that's about it for the basics of manipulation. That kind of gives you a sense of the broader strokes. Next video we're going to go into and actually learn about all of these different things. But once you get in, your workflow is going to be pretty quick once you master just a few couple of concepts such as working planes, Z, push-pull, extrude. The last thing I'll mention actually is if you are looking to adjust, always remember, just come back here into your object info. So you can change, again, your extrusions over here, your X, Y, and you can also change if you're trying to move something. Say we're in a front view. If we're looking at that and I want to move something down, yeah, we can just pull it down with a handle. But if we want to do something that's a little more exact, we can also change our bottom Z here. So if it's at 0, it's sitting right on our piece of paper. And let's say if it's 2 foot, it's 2 feet above that piece of paper. The other thing to consider in this is our design layers. So design layers, as we mentioned in a previous video, all have elevations to them. So if you draw an object on a given design layer, let's take a look at these two layers we have here. Design layer 1, elevation 0. So that's even with our piece of paper. Design layer 2, I've given a 20-foot elevation to. So if I'm in design layer 2 and I'm drawing, we'll just do a rectangle again. That is still drawing on the layer plane, but it's drawing on the layer plane of design layer 2. So everything I draw in here, the design layer, the layer plane is going to be at 20 foot. So you'll see that little box I did is coming in 20 feet above all of these other objects down there. So that's another way that you can modify and manipulate elevations of things. Now if I were to move this down 20 feet, Control-Alt-M to move, or go up to Modify, or you can go up to Modify, Move, 3D. Let's take that down 20 feet. And that's on the same layer plane now as everything else. However, if I changed it from design layer 2, I'm going to put it on design layer 1. So now it'll be 20 feet below everything else. It's kind of a weird concept, but that's the way that design layers can help you kind of track different things. Anyway, that's about it. That's a lot for one quick lesson. But next time we're going to get in and we're going to jump into a lot more of the tools and start having some more fun. All right. Bye-bye.